Hello, young illustrators. My name is Robert Young, and I'm an illustrator, designer, printmaker, fine artist, and professor of illustration. And today, I'm going to talk about getting work, the thing that everyone wants to know how to do. I have to give you a little bit of a disclaimer because I can't tell you exactly how you can get work, you individually. I don't know. It's hard. It's not easy. It's not the same for everyone. It's not the same for every industry or niche of illustration, animation, visual arts. It's just not the same. I think sometimes I'll see people online, illustrators that I like or other educators that I like or something, and they'll talk about, do these things to guarantee that you get work. And I don't think that's a guarantee that can be made. So what I'm going to talk about is all kinds of stuff that goes into trying to get work. The biggest thing, though, is going to be persistence and adaptability. So, if you're trying something and it's not working for years, and you just keep doing it because somebody told you that that's how they got work, it may never work out for you. So adapt. Like, if it's not working, find lots of people talking about how they got work in the industry. I can tell you for myself personally that a lot of my jobs have come through personal networking. School is really helpful for that. That's one of the big things I think that going to an art school has, that teaching yourself or learning online kind of outside of this in-person close-knit arts community, especially like when you're all learning at the same time and you're all kind of making the same mistakes at the same time and all of that stuff. Like I think that's amazing. That's one of the absolute best way to form these sort of lasting relationships. And then, hopefully these people go on to be art directors or to be illustrators, and you can help each other out. We'll kind of get into that a little bit later. But that's where a lot of my work comes from. I've never gotten a single job through posting on social media that I'm aware of. But obviously that's a thing that works for a lot of people. I've never gotten a job from sending a mailer campaign. I don't really work in industries where that happens that much. I have done it. I've tried it in the past, but I tried it, it didn't work out, so I stopped doing it for a little while. Maybe it's something I'll go back to in the future. Maybe I'll decide to change what kind of work I'm interested in getting. But sort of resilience and adaptability are going to be super important. And if something's not working for you, that's okay. Just try something else. Think about it. Analyze what's going on, what kind of information you're getting back from people, and change your approach a little bit. Just a little bit here and there. It doesn't need to be, some wild 180. And definitely don't get that resistance and then just quit. Because that's what a lot of people do. It is a tough job. I don't really want to mince words about that. It's just super tough. But keep at it. I think everybody has, a good shot of getting illustration work if they can figure out where they're needed, where their work is appropriate for, all of that stuff. So first thing is to identify what kind of work you want. Obviously there's so many avenues of illustration, animation, design, fine art, gallery art, all of these things. So, if you know that you're not interested in certain things, that narrows it down. You don't have to worry about those. Who out there is making work similar to yours or similar to the work that you want to make, or who's influencing you and inspiring you, and who do they work for? If somebody's doing similar work to you, and let's say it's something that's considered to be more of an editorial style currently. And then you see that they get a bunch of jobs suddenly with like fashion marketing, advertising or something. Maybe that's something you never considered before. You just never thought like, oh, maybe I would like to do lifestyle illustration for clothing brands. But this person who's doing similar work to you starts getting those jobs. That might be a new avenue for you. So pay attention to that stuff. Keep notes on it. And, you know, just being a consumer of media and illustration and other artists, being an appreciator of visual culture and visual artists can help you out a lot with that. So another big decision you have to make is whether or not you want to work freelance or in-house, or a combination of both. I don't know what the actual data is offhand, or if it's even accurate. There are a number of sort of illustration surveys. I think Ben the Illustrator has done a really good one for the last few years that has some of this information in it. But and it's a large pool of illustrators. But again, this is going to be really dependent on different genres of illustration, different industries, design, fine art, all of these different variables. So I don't know for sure, but it seems to me that the majority of illustrators are working freelance, some version of freelance. That might be full-time freelance, it might be part-time freelance. There's nothing wrong with part-time freelance and a full-time day job. There's nothing wrong with that. I did it for a very long time. I do it now. Now I'm a full-time educator, and so my part-time job is as an illustrator, a freelance illustrator. You know, we have bills to pay. You know, we have to navigate our economy, all of that stuff. You know, you're not a failure. You're not good enough or any of that crap. If you have to have a day job, I would say, you know, find a day job that you like. I like having other things to do apart from illustration. If that's, you know, I was a bike mechanic for a very long time. I used to work in wood shops. You know, I would take odd jobs. I don't really like working in a cubicle or just doing sort of menial office tasks. So if you know that about yourself, you know, hopefully you can try to find a day job that you don't hate. And then that way, you know, hopefully your day job then has stuff like healthcare and other benefits. Because if you're freelance, that's usually not something that you're going to get. You're going to have to pay for those things out of pocket. What you will get with freelance is more freedom. So you can turn down jobs. You can switch up your profile or your portfolio and go after new industries or new clients. You can take a wider variety of jobs. You can have more say in your fee, you know, negotiating these fees individually per the client and, you know, the size of the client and that stuff, versus if you are in-house illustration, you're probably going to get a salary. But as freelance, you are going to have a lot less security. So if you're full-time freelance, that security and the healthcare stuff, that's going to be the biggest challenges. If you know that you're someone who has a lot of, you know, medical expenses, or if you get injured a lot, for years I didn't have a car and I rode my bike everywhere. At one point I was riding my bike to my day job. It was 20 miles in each direction, and I had next to no insurance, terrible insurance that cost me a lot of money. And so I was terrified of like getting hit by a car. So luckily I had a day job to give me secure, or like you know, more pay more often, a reliable paycheck. But those are things you have to consider. So in-house, you know, some genres of illustration, some markets of visual arts or design or animation are not going to have in-house positions very often. So, usually like editorial is something thought of to not have hardly any in-house positions. There are some, but most people in that field work freelance. But visual development is thought of to be almost entirely in-house, but a lot of people that do visual development are freelance, or they're contract based or something. It's not, there's not like one magic bullet that takes care of all of these things. But if you do find or if you do pursue in-house jobs, they tend to have more security. You're working for a company. That company, if they've been around for a while, like you're going to get a check every couple of weeks. There's more predictability in the jobs. This really comes down to what kind of person are you. Like, I really like having new jobs all the time. Some people want to kind of hunker down. They want to focus on things. They want to be a specialist. So know that about yourself. That might help you decide whether or not you fit in more with freelance or in-house situations. Hopefully, if you're in-house, you have healthcare and other benefits. And that can be stuff that, apart from healthcare, that could be just like access to the Adobe Creative Suite, or access to specialized printing equipment or building equipment, or, game engines or whatever. Those can be kind of other perks to having an in-house job that if you're freelance, you're not going to have that stuff. Also, in-house is, I think, a much more direct way to get those jobs. Basically, you can check the company's website, or you can check industry employment websites, ArtStation, Indeed, Working Not Working. They have jobs boards. Lots of places have jobs boards. Then you're gonna see what it is that they want in an application. You put your application together, you apply, and then if they hire you, you go to work there. That's way more straightforward than freelance illustration. So most of today's lecture is going to be about freelance illustration because it is harder and murkier. So for freelance illustration, you're gonna research your clients. Who do you want to work for, and what do they like? What's their reputation? Do they have a bad reputation? Do they pay on time? Is the pay commensurate with the industry? Is the work culture agreeable? What is it like to work with that client? You may not know, you might not be able to find those things out, but I always try to check, sort of personal morals and ethics come into this too. Like, if you know that you disagree with something that this company does, then you'll know that maybe you don't want to work for them, and so you don't have to send your portfolio to them. Always occur, or if you know that they've gotten in trouble for like stealing other people's artwork in the past or something like that. Not to be too like dire about it, but it's just good to know who you're working with and kind of what they're about. Part of that research will also be, who is it that works there that hires you? What is their title? What are they called? How do you find out who they are? So I would say most of the time it's going to be art director or creative director, but not always. It could be a lead designer, it could be a concept lead, it could be an editor. Could just be some office person, it could be HR. It's not usually, but you should know who it is there that actually hires the illustrators. Sometimes their titles will change, meaning that like that person moves to a different part of the company, or something that happens a lot is somebody's doing more than one job. So maybe the lead designer is hiring you because they didn't have an art director there. They may not have an art director or a creative director. So sometimes it takes a little bit of digging to find out who it is actually that hires illustrators or designers or animators at this at this place. As you're doing this, you want to build a database. So create a spreadsheet of names, email addresses, physical company addresses, like the building address. That'll apply to sending mailers and physical mail and stuff. But the name and the email address is most important. I don't know of anybody that you could just call anymore, so I don't bother trying to find people's phone numbers. I know personally, I can't stand it when someone calls me when it could just be an email and they're not my friend. So I don't want to like call an art director on the phone. That sounds terrifying. So name and email address is probably all you need for that. Pay attention, when you're working or whatever. Listen to podcasts, read interviews about illustration or articles about illustration, interviews with illustrators. Sometimes illustration podcasts will interview art directors, and they'll talk about what it is that they're looking for. So make a note of what it is that they're looking for. What do they like to see in a portfolio? What do they not like to see in a portfolio? How do they like to be contacted? Are there ways that they especially dislike being contacted? Like, they don't want an Instagram DM or something. Or maybe in this interview, they're like, hey, I don't mind, send me an Instagram DM, young illustrators. Then make a note of that. And then do that thing. So that'll help you a lot, and it'll help you keep track of things, and it'll help you keep track of like how often you email them. Did you just email them last week? Because if you did, then maybe you don't need to this week. We'll kind of get into the cold emails a little bit later, but the database is going to help you a lot. There's a couple different ways to find this information. One, if you're lucky, they just list their email address. And this is specifically because a lot of art directors and creative directors are also illustrators and designers. They may have their own website for their own personal work, basically, like your portfolio website. They may have that for themselves. So, depending on the person, it might not be cool to send them an email to their personal like art account or, some like old Yahoo Mail account that you found for them. Try to find their work email. One really good way to do that is to find an email address just for that company in general and look at how the email is formatted, the naming convention of the email. It might be, and a lot of times is, first initial, last name at company.com. So now, even though you found the email address for Ron Johnson and you need the email address for the art director whose name is John Ronson, you know that it's just first initial, last name. So plug it in. See if it works. If it doesn't work, usually you get a bounce back saying that email is not accurate. Now, with big international companies or with companies who outsource their art directors or creative directors, that gets a little bit more challenging. You have to do some more digging. But that's the way that I find 90% of email addresses for art directors that I want to work for. Another good tool is something like LinkedIn. I'd say it's probably the only thing it's good for. The only thing that I've been able to use it for is just finding out like who's the art director at this company. Are they still there? If I haven't emailed an art director for a while, I want to make sure maybe once a year I'll go through my database and just make sure that those people are actually still there. Art directors tend to move from company to company. Some people are just doing it kind of as a part-time gig. Or people's lives change. They just go do something else. So if they're not there anymore, you don't need to send them an email. So, I talked a little bit about addresses. Physical addresses are useful when you are creating a plan to get your work in front of art directors or whoever it is that's going to hire you by using real physical mail. for some industries, this is still fairly popular. I'd say probably publishing is the most popular. So if you're wanting to work in books, you can have fairly inexpensively made mailer cards. They're just like postcard sized things that have your information on them and some of your work and your URL that you physically mail. This isn't a super common practice anymore, and I wouldn't say that it's absolutely necessary. Like I said, I've never really had a lot of success with it, but a lot of people have. So, it's worth trying, or at least maybe for some dream clients or something. I've got another lecture planned for business cards and mailers, so I'll get into that more when that comes up and show you all kind of examples of. I have a huge file of just business cards and mailers that I've picked up doing conventions over the years or talking to illustrators, finding them that have been left behind places. But that's why you would need the physical address. And you should come up with a plan. Like how often are you going to do something like that? That's going to cost more money than sending an email. So you're going to want to know how many cards you're going to need per year, how often you want to change up the image. You can also have multiple cards made with different images on them. There's lots of websites you can find that print these things. I don't want to plug in anybody. I'm not sponsored. So that's one way to do it. But I wouldn't say, again, that it's necessarily the best. So cold emails. This is the predominant method of getting your work in front of art directors. So, you built that database, you have all these people's email addresses, and now it's time to send them your work. Really, whenever you feel like you're ready. Don't wait forever. Don't wait until everything's perfect and all the stars align. I've only had one person who ever got back to me and was super mean or just gave a really harsh critique. And I've sent thousands and thousands and thousands of cold emails. So one thing that I've found that has helped me to do that is to craft a template and then change that template to address specific clients and companies. So I don't think it's necessarily a great idea to just send some big blanket form letter to everyone. It's impersonal. You're not sending it to them. You're sending it to just everybody. This is, I think, especially bad. It's something that, if you follow art directors on Twitter, Instagram, stuff like that, which I think is a good idea, especially when my rule is kind of if they post work stuff on their Instagram or Twitter, I'll follow them. If it's just pictures of their dog and their kids and family and friends, it's a really personal thing, then I don't follow them if I don't know them. It seems weird to me, but everybody's a little bit different. So, if you follow them, you'll see sometimes they post about how they like receiving work, or sometimes they post about how annoying it is when they get 10 emails from the same person in a day, or they keep getting emails where they're just lumped in with 500 other art directors that somebody bought from a list. I don't think that that's super good advice to take. So I always send email. I send one at a time. I send it to someone that I want to work with, and I keep it pretty short. Here's my information. I'd love to work with you. Maybe something in there about why, maybe there was a recent piece that they did, or another illustrator that they published that I thought was really cool. Maybe there was an article for that magazine that I decided to give myself a sort of a personal project of doing an illustration for that, and I just go like, hey, I saw like you all posted this thing, I'd love to work on something like that. I kind of came up with this illustration based on this article that you all published. Here's some more examples of my work and a link to my portfolio. It doesn't have to be 5 pages long. Art directors are getting 1 million emails a day. So, if you've sent them a whole treatise on why you're awesome, they may not be able to read that. It also might just look like spam. It's just like a wall of text. So I think that short and sweet works pretty well. I don't put anything in there. I don't recommend that people put stuff in there about like, hey, I'm just a student, or definitely never like talk down your work. Don't get on there and go like, I'm not very good yet, but blah blah blah. Just present your work. Let your work speak for itself. If you do need to provide a little bit of context for an image, do so, but briefly, I think is probably best. Don't email clients who don't hire your type of work. I mean, if they just don't do that thing, or if it's just wildly inappropriate, like if you have all of this sort of adult blood and gore erotica stuff in your portfolio and you're sending it to like highlights for children, then that's not good. That's really weird and inappropriate. So make sure that you're interviewing, or you're sending your work to people who actually hire that kind of work. It pays to understand the clients that you want to work with and kind of what their visual brand is, what their style is. More so for your benefit than theirs. Just if they don't hire that kind of work, then you don't need to waste your time applying or trying to get a job, trying to get a collaboration or a commission from them. Obviously, do email clients who hire the type of work that you do already. As far as frequency, once every few months is probably fine, unless you've done new work that you want people to see. Just once every couple of months, 2-3 months. Definitely don't email them every day or every week. That's probably too much. It's probably going to get annoying. There is, sometimes people feel compelled to do that because you don't often get responses. So, you might think, well, maybe they didn't get it. That's fine. They probably got it. Just wait a couple months and then, send them some more work. You kind of just do that forever. If they do respond, even if it's not, obviously if they respond and say, hey, we want to hire you right now, that's amazing. You've completed the getting work part of getting work. But if they just respond and say like, hey, I really like this, thanks for letting me know, I'll keep you in mind, just, thank them. I think it's just polite to do that. It doesn't have to be anything long, just thanks, look forward to it, something like that. I'm from the Midwest, so I feel very compelled to be polite all the time. Don't fall into a pit of despair if you don't hear from them. It's okay. They can't respond to everybody. They can't respond to most people. Art directors are getting bombarded with emails all the time. And the same goes if you're trying to apply for an in-house job. If you're just like spamming them with applications and emails every day, that might just tell them that you're not someone that they want to work with. So it doesn't come off very well or very professional. So yeah, just every couple of months. While you're kind of waiting to hear back from people, tailor your portfolio to that kind of work, the kind of work that you want. Make new pieces. Redesign your portfolio if it's been a while. You don't have to sit there and pull your hair out next to your computer like refreshing your email client. You can do other things. Just continue to better yourself as an artist. Take a class, learn a new skill, get on YouTube and find out how to use After Effects or something. Make some fine art. Another thing that you could do, and I have to preface this with, I do not and have never had an agent, but agents can help you get work. So in some sort of genres and markets of illustration, agents are going to be more common. Like again, in editorial, there definitely are editorial agents or editorial illustrators that have agents, but I think there's probably fewer than in something like children's books, or if you're an animator or you're a viz dev and you want to make cartoon shows, it's really hard to like pitch your cartoon show to a Cartoon Network unless you have an entertainment agent. So agents can help you get work. They can also help you negotiate your rate, handle contracts and communication. They can be really, really helpful. They do take a cut of your fee. So, it can be 20 to 40% of a fee that is for the services that they're rendering to you. One thing that's really important to know is that if you do have an agent, you shouldn't be paying them anything if they're not getting you work. So their pay should be based on jobs that they get you. Now, sometimes agents have, that part of that contract is that you have to use them to negotiate your stuff for any job that you get, even if it doesn't come from the agent directly. Like if someone just emails you privately and says, hey, we want to hire you for this, your contract may say you need to go through my agent. So that's important to know. Sometimes your agent only applies to jobs working in the United States or in the UK or wherever you're from. Sometimes it's international. Sometimes it's just for certain types of work. So there's all kinds of client or contract stuff that you need to know for what kind of the agent's role is and how you need to navigate those situations. So for me, the way that I've gotten almost every single job that I've ever gotten has come down to networking and interpersonal connections, referrals from friends or people that I worked with before. For me, this has been the thing that has worked most consistently. It's helpful because I like knowing people in the industry. Like I just, anybody that knows me in real life, I talk about illustration a lot and I talk about teaching a lot. These aren't things that I like sort of have fallen back on because, it's really hard to get rich off of them. But these are just part of who I am. It's part of the stuff that I love. So getting to know other people that do these things, for me, doesn't feel like work. And networking shouldn't feel like work. It's not some like American Psycho thing where you're just trying to get to know people to use them later on down the road. That's, I think what pops into a lot of people's heads when they hear about networking. That sounds horrible. I would hate to do that. So for me, networking is really more of just being involved in the community of illustration, design, art, animation, teaching, all of these things. So, again, if you went to art school, you've probably done some of this just in your peers in art school. They're going to go on to be artists too. So, if you were kind of mean to everybody in art school, that may have not been the best idea. I don't think you should be mean to people anyway. And I definitely don't think that it's something that you should look at as a way to take advantage of again later. I think it's a really important point to make. But that's where you usually get your start. Some other stuff is going to conferences. So for illustration, 2 years ago now was the first time that I went to Icon, the illustration conference, and it was in Detroit, and it's, multiple days of workshops and lectures and meetups and parties, and it was amazing. I loved it. So much so that I submitted a paper to give a presentation at Icon 11 that unfortunately was canceled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But Icon is something that happens every couple of years, so I think the plan is for it to be, they kind of pushed it back for a couple of years. So hopefully at Icon 11 I will be there giving a presentation on discussing and developing style in the classroom. But there's all kinds of stuff. There's pedagogy stuff, like the presentation I was going to give, and then there's stuff about like I went to a Photoshop brush making workshop. But all around me are illustrators, art directors, designers, educators, all of these people. So really great place to meet and talk to people about illustration, and to just really kind of nerd out on illustration, and while you're doing so, network. So also parties, like the American Illustration Party in New York every year is a lot of fun. And it's mostly a way to like kind of just go have fun with a bunch of illustrators rather than everybody shoving their business cards in each other's faces. But you go to those things, you talk to people, and that can turn into work later on. And even if it doesn't, you met cool people. Other industry events, this is going to be, there are some for the games industry, for animation industries like CTX or CTN rather, comic conventions. I make not as often anymore, but like independent self-published comics, and so I would take them to things like Cake or SPX or Mocha. The stuff that I do wasn't really appropriate for kind of superhero comic cons, but if that's the kind of work that you're doing, get a table at Wizard World or at New York Comic Con or something. I did Baltimore Comic Con once. You meet a lot of people. It can be an entrepreneurial outlet, like you're selling your work. But there are people that are also artists who are also people who hire artists, and they can see your work there. Another great way to network. And if you're like me, I just like being at like SPX is my favorite convention. I love that convention. I loved tabling it, and I loved just being there as a fan. I just want to kind of immerse myself in the stuff that I do. Another thing is continued education. Maybe not necessarily like going back to school full time, but just taking a class for people that are in the industry, or through one-off classes or whatever. You can meet people that way. So again, one of the big things is just supporting your friends and peers, like just to be a good person, but also understanding that whether or not you get work can be reliant on your reputation. So if your reputation is as, a good, supportive, friendly, hardworking, honest person, then that's more likely to help you out getting a job. If your reputation is that you're toxic, or you're mean or bitter or selfish, self-centered, whatever, really competitive towards other artists or art directors, game companies, animators, whatever, if you've kind of developed this persona that people don't want to be around, then it may not matter how good your work is or whether or not you can get it in front of the right people. Your reputation might ruin that for you. So some other ways to get some kind of additional eyes on your work. don't overlook avenues that have traditionally, and I think incorrectly, been thought of as purely fine art opportunities. So there are lots of galleries that cater to illustration, commercial artists. Don't think that because you're an animator, you can't have work in a gallery. I've had animation work in galleries. I've submitted animation work to film festivals in the past. Residencies as well. There are some that are specifically for illustrators or animators, but there are some that are just for visual arts in general, and you're visual artists. So, really, the big difference for me between fine art and illustration is just context. So if you present the context and content of your work in a slightly different way, then that could be something that a gallery then sees and goes like, oh, okay, yeah, we'd love to do a show with you. Or you can approach the gallery and say, hey, I have this body of work that I want to show. This is what it's about. For illustrators and commercial artists, like your work is about something just as much as fine art is about something. I think it's a big mistake for commercial artists to, think of their work as sort of just for the client, or just this collaborative thing, or like less than fine art or whatever. I don't really care too much about those designations. Again, it's mostly just context. So I kind of just do whatever I want to do, which allows me then to, make prints and put them in a gallery. I meet different types of people there, but it's, just sort of widening that approach and still doing something that I love. I can still, make money that way, selling my work. There have been a few jobs that I've gotten that came from my putting work in a gallery and somebody seeing it and hiring me for it. I do a lot of work for kind of smaller companies that don't normally hire illustrators, and that's how I get those jobs. It's just through networking, because they're definitely not going on Instagram to find illustrators, or going to Working Not Working to hire illustrators. They never really thought about hiring an illustrator before. It's just they saw my work because I put it out there somewhere, or I found out that they needed something through someone that I know who knows them. These can also give you kind of fresh outlets for your work, and ways to get new eyes, or renewing interest for illustration jobs, even just for yourself, like as personal work, to explore new conceptual directions for your work, new techniques and things. So personal projects then are another way. Obviously, when you don't have work coming in, make personal work. When you make that work, get it in front of people through Instagram, Twitter, whatever, your portfolio, galleries again, do collaborations with other people. Just make your own jobs up. One of the things that I do a lot is sell screen prints. So I'll make screen prints, or I'll make my comics that I self-publish. I've screen printed bandanas before, t-shirts, I've made trading cards, any of those sort of entrepreneurial approaches. While I'm not getting client work or editorial work, or whatever it is that I'm pursuing at the time, I'm still bringing in money through illustration and getting my work out there in front of more people, and hopefully leading on to new jobs in the future. This can also be a time to pitch work to people. So if you make comics and you're not getting hired on to do comics, let's say you're trying to do pencils for somebody, make your own book. Make your own book and pitch that book to a publisher. There's tons and tons of outlets for that. Also knowing the industry and the industry trends will help a lot with that, because they change. I mean, it used to be that if you wanted to do comics for a publisher, it was pretty much just a couple of the big traditional comics like superhero book publishers. But now, young adult or middle grade kids comics, those publishers have a much bigger share in the industry than Marvel and DC do. So write a book and pitch it. write a cartoon show and pitch it. Again, that's something that you might need an agent for. But if work's not coming in, just make work and try to find a spot for it. So one of the last things that I'm going to talk about is competitions. This used to be one of the number one ways to get your work in front of people. Art directors looked at competitions. They were trying to find, who's like the next hot young illustrator. We looked at them as like a real, like, high watermark for illustration. Like, this is the good stuff. Someone is curating this, whatever. But the types of curation in society have really changed. I mean, it's been taken out of the hands of what were a pretty small number of, like, quote unquote experts, and now it's kind of up to everybody else. I mean, you've got stuff that gets wildly popular that critics hate, but we have social media and the internet to be able to get our work in front of people who would be the actual audience for it, and they decide, like, maybe they're buying your work and critics hate it. Well, do you like the money or do you like the praise from critics? So competitions, I think the efficacy of competitions and annuals for getting new work has greatly diminished over the last decade or so, because it's so easy to find new artists online. There's kind of problems with both of those things that I got into in the social media lecture. But one of the big things for me with competitions, and I do occasionally submit to competitions. I've been in a few, been featured in a few competitions, but I think it's important to recognize that while they can be a good way of getting your work in front of people, they also can kind of give, I think, an inaccurate picture of illustration or design or arts culture as a whole. They can be very expensive to submit work to, and often if your work is selected, then you have to pay more money to have your work actually showcased. So let's say you pay $35 for a piece for a show, and then you get in, you might pay $50 then for them to hang it. You might also have to pay to print and frame your work and to ship it to them, which can be expensive. So and that's just for one piece. So it's kind of like buying a lottery ticket, right? Like, if you just buy one lottery ticket, you have whatever your chances of getting in. But if you buy 50 lottery tickets where you submit 50 pieces to a competition, then maybe you have a higher chance of getting in. I've never gotten into a competition when I only submitted one or two pieces. It's only ever been when I submitted several and had to pay several $100s in the application fees that I get one or two pieces in. So I don't think they're necessarily showcasing the best work. Rather, it is the best work only from a pool of people who can afford to pay, who can afford to be seen by these people. So when you're a student and you have the opportunity to have a much lower entry fee, or if that fee is paid for you by a school or someone else, take advantage of that, because I do think it's a great way to get your work in front of people. Also, if you're a working illustrator and you have an agent and your agent takes care of those things, or clients, publishing or editorial clients, lots of clients can submit work on your behalf and you don't pay for anything. So that's great. Obviously, like, if you don't have to pay, then do the competition. If you do have to pay, then just understand that competitions can be really helpful, but you don't have to do them. And if you're struggling to make ends meet, don't worry about spending a bunch of money trying to get your work into a competition. I have never gotten a job from being in a competition, for being accepted into a juried competition or an annual or anything like that. To be fair, I've never won any major awards, so maybe that's why. But this has been a common thing. I like to just talk to people about illustration. I know a lot of illustrators, and I don't really know of very many people who have gotten a ton of jobs from winning an award or for having their work in competitions. But there definitely are people that have. So again, it's a thing of just understanding that it's not just one avenue. Some things work for some people, and other things don't work for other people, and their work might be similar, the backgrounds might be similar, everything else might be similar. There are these sort of invisible, unknowable things that go into whether or not one of these avenues works for you. Another thing is if you're an animator, which a lot of illustrators anymore are, I would say that animation is a necessary skill to have if you are an illustrator in a lot of commercial fields, editorial, marketing, advertising, stuff like that. And it's really easy. It's not very hard. Lots of programs do it. There's lots of tutorials to help you. But if you can draw something once and you can draw another frame of that thing that's changed slightly, and you can do that 12 or 24 times a second for a few seconds, then you can put a looping GIF together. And there are film festivals that accept really short films or even animated GIFs or motion illustration, sometimes it's called. So that's another option for getting work. So in summary, hopefully you found some of this stuff helpful. I really wish that there were more direct ways to if I could just tell you what the secret is, and then you could just go out and do that. I don't believe that there really is much of a meritocracy. I think you have to have good work. You have to have solid work in your portfolio. You have to continue to improve your work and all of that stuff. But there are lots of people that make very good work who have trouble finding jobs for long periods of time, or just sometimes. We don't live in a meritocracy. I don't believe that there is a meritocracy. You may have an easier time getting into illustration due to who you lucked out in getting to know and network with. If you can't afford to go to all the icons and American illustration parties and AluxCons and CTNs and that stuff, then you might have a smaller pool. But it might also be that you're overlooking clients. You don't always have to go after like the biggest name clients all the time. There's plenty of people. Like most of my jobs are not the kind of jobs that tend to win the big design and illustration awards, because they're for small companies, but they still pay me. I still get to do what I love to do. Look for those outlets that are not things that you would typically think of. There isn't like a hierarchy to the jobs of illustration. Like editorial is not better than advertising, is not better than surface design, is not better than animation or anything like that. For people wanting to go into viz dev, like sure, there's AAA and AA game studios, and there these big properties that you grew up playing that are amazing and look cool and everybody wants to play. But there's also people making educational games. There's people making interactive books for kids, and they need animators and developers and viz dev too. So keep that stuff in mind. But hopefully this helps you, and hopefully you can put together a plan and start getting your work out there and get some jobs. All right. Thanks for listening. If there's anything that you're interested in hearing about in the future, feel free to leave me a comment. Share it with your friends. Share it with your enemies. I think the next one will be about getting paid. So look forward to that coming in a few weeks. Thanks. Bye.